Okay, some of you mixed race individuals, especially you whose ancestry includes African to whatever degree, some of you are honest about what your life is and probably what it's been from the day you were born right up through your adult years, and then you have others where they're playing the role of a black culture Nazi or a white culture Nazi or a whatever race culture Nazi because they want to fit in and be accepted. And half the time that shit probably doesn't work out for them anyway. Most likely, probably no. So, but anyway, for those of you who are more honest about what your existence really is, those of you who have not had a not so sheltered life, Oprah, she came out with a documentary on what happens to lighter skinned mixed race women. And most people didn't really listen to that. And she did a documentary on what happens to a lot of darker skinned women, and most people didn't really listen to that either. Especially our men. So whether you're black and white, or black and Native American, or black and Asian, or to whatever degree, all of the above, like myself, I mean, you've seen the best of what people are capable of, and you've probably seen a whole lot of the worst of what they're capable of. Think of it as like the meat factory metaphor. We have millions, billions of tons of meat being sold in grocery stores all over this country. But how many of us have ever actually physically seen a meat processing plant physically in real life and not on TV? Almost none of us. We got millions of pounds of meat being processed and sold on grocery store shelves every year. But most of us have never actually seen the inside of one in real life, like physically in person. So, if it's that easy to do this to animals, then yes, any ethnic group can do ugly shit to their own people or to other races of people in private, quietly, and they can do it to thousands or millions of their own people, and you wouldn't know anything about it without someone going in as a whistleblower. If you can do it to animals in a meat factory, you better believe you can do it to people too. It has been done. So with that said, it's very important as a mixed race person to try to creatively reach for win-win situations that create equity. It'd be beneficial to try to manifest circumstances that create equity. Because if you join a homogenous group of any kind, or even if you join a diverse group that tends to marginalize or silence women who look like you, if you get a little bit too honest, and if you don't look enough like a Mariah Carey or a Salma Hayek, if you're in that circumstance, then yeah, there might be a lot of cases where you're pretty much on your own, without a doubt on your own, if people get desperate enough. And if you don't look enough like what any particular group of people wants to see, if you don't talk or think like what any particular group of people wants to see, you know it. And when you're dealing with a group of people that's more than capable of hurting you first before anyone else, oppressing you first before anyone else, or silencing you first before anyone else. When you're dealing with those kind of people. At best, you can try to stimulate diplomacy and equity, because if there's no diplomacy and no equity between the races, then that means there's no real peace for you. And you might have to go through life trying to pretend with black people, or trying to pretend with Native American people, or trying to pretend with white people, or trying to pretend with Asians. And, you know, everybody wants a little more sweetness in life. And if you're a person from different backgrounds, that's the sweet spot for you, is to try to find ways to encourage or manifest diplomacy between the various groups. Or at the very least, to just protect yourself while Mother Nature does whatever's going to be done moving forward. Because, you know, the nature-based troubles that we're seeing in 2020, people, they want to try to put all that off on the government. They want to say the government was the cause of all of it, but that's not true. It's like they just took advantage of the situation for political reasons. At the start of the pandemic, the message to Christians, Christian prophetic pastors, and also some Hindu prophets was basically, nature will prophesy to man. You know, that's basically like the Creator saying, you're not going to listen anyway, so why am I going to send someone to talk to you? You know, so if you can't promote equity, if you can't promote any win-win situations because of the nature of adults, then at the very best, you can just try to protect yourself and to try to recognize when you're dealing with people who absolutely would hurt you or abandon you first. You know, whether that's a homogenous group or a diverse group that really will definitely silence women who look like you when you try to get a little too honest about what life is. You know, you gotta fill these people out and just try to stay safe. And, you know, you have to form relationships with others who are like you and in your position, in addition to others who are not truly like you. You know, because again, you know, if you're dealing with somebody and they're trying to force you to have a relationship with someone of your own race who's really, really prejudiced towards you and makes a lot of assumptions and trying to force you to have relationships with individuals who are toxic or abusive, you know when you're dealing with somebody like that. And you know they're going to hurt you the minute they get desperate enough. You know, so you need to look within, try to find the genuine, authentic, higher spirituality and not a lot of the counterfeit stuff that's going around. You know, because again, a lot of the people who are so-called Pan-Africans, do they advocate for a lot of the civil rights violations and abuses against women in Africa and here in America? No, they don't. You know, people who advocate for Native American rights, do they advocate aggressively for the plight against the Native American women who do look darker and more Negroid like a lot of their ancestors? No, they don't say shit to advocate on behalf of those women. You know, you look at a lot of Asian nations, you see the same thing. So if you have any spiritual group that is saying little to nothing about the most abused and marginalized people in their own nation, saying nothing about the extreme colorism and extreme discrimination against women in their own ethnic group who don't have a nose like a white woman, you know, if they're not addressing the human rights and civil rights and extreme discrimination among their own people, and then promoting racial superiority, promoting divisiveness, okay, well then you know you're dealing with someone who is Adolf Hitler in another color. And You might not be able to tame that down. You might be able to, you might not be able to. But the very least you can do is to try to form groups with others who are more like yourself. So that way, if we do get a second pandemic that's far worse, if the American dollar does get devalued to the value of a peso, if specific worse natural disasters do come because of climate change and because the Arctic forests have been burning repeatedly for the first time in history for about a year now, if things do go downhill, at least you have other like-minded people who you can try to partner up with. And that might be difficult. Honestly, I'm not even really sure if it's even possible. I mean, it might be, it might not, who knows? All you can do is try. That's all anyone can do in life, is to just try their best, and either it works or it doesn't. But the most important thing, whether there's a worse breakdown coming or not, the most important thing is to try to creatively find paths to diplomacy and to try to creatively find some kind of way to puncture that thick and very natural, very instinctive prejudice on both sides. Because you may or may not be seeing it now, but let these people get desperate enough and you'll really see it. Because again, racism is not about hate. It's not about a personal problem. It's about dominance and control, especially control of resources, especially control of access to a mate or having a home or whatever. Racism is about control. It's about territorialism and instinct. Just like if you have a pet dog that you love and it's sitting in the yard barking, you're trying to make sure no one else can come in. That's what it's about. It's not about hate. It's not about anything personal. And the mass media paints racism as a hate-based issue because that's what they use to control the thoughts of young, impressionable children. And also, that's what they use to control the impressions of people who haven't had enough exposure to really understand what this thing is. Don't let them influence you like children. You're not a child. My video is for people 18 years old and older. So, if you are an adult, you need that adult understanding that racism is about dominance, power, and control. It don't have shit to do with hate or a personal problem. And the people who don't understand that, most of the time, it's young people. It's young people who haven't had a lot of exposure. It's young people who don't have a lot of life experience. It's young people who don't know just how badly your own people and also other races of people can oppress you, fuck up your life, and fuck up your family if they get desperate enough, or greedy enough, or territorial and aggressive enough. So, at least for damage control, whether there is a government or no matter what circumstances human beings live in, we're always going to need diplomacy. And as mixed race people, it's even more important for you because there are a lot of circumstances where you could be at risk of being some of the first people on the chopping block.